Hello and welcome to Rights of the Free People, a program of the Rhode Island affiliate of the American Civil Liberties Union. My name is Dan Weissman, a longtime volunteer at the ACLU and host of this program. This being June, it's Pride Month. So we're doing our annual Pride show for the month of June. And I have two people here who know a whole lot about Pride Month and the festivities that go with it. And they're going to share their insights with us. Starting closest to me is Marissa Patricia, who lives in Cranston, and longtime participant.
Yes.
Okay. In Pride activities. Isaac Albanese, who is in the Student Activities Office at Brown, also a resident of Cranston. So we have a Cranston group here today. So, and both are rookies on this program. So we have two first-timers, and that will hopefully they'll come back and be veterans before next year's Pride Month. There are other issues maybe they'll be able to help us with. So let's get into this. This year, this is a little different than previous Junes because we're not focusing on a particular bill in the General Assembly or a court case. We're looking into the personal side of LGBTQ issues and experiences. And we're lucky we have Isaac and Marissa who can share willing to share some of their experiences, the highs and some of the challenges and some of the current events. So we didn't decide who's going to go first, so we'll let you fight over it. But we want to begin with, so tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Great.
Marissa.
I'll start. Okay. Age before beauty. So my name's Marissa, yes. And as you mentioned, I live in Cranston, born in Maine, but grew up in Rhode Island my entire life. My parents moved here when I was 1 year old, so. And I am happily married to my partner, spouse, just from the last year. We've been together for 16 years, and we have a daughter together, and we have a house, and live in Cranston, and we kind of did things in reverse order. We were together for, like I said, 15 years, and really never thought about the opportunity to marry. We didn't really have the opportunity to marry, so we kind of had resigned ourselves, and not necessarily a negative way, but just thought, okay, we're committed to each other. We're going to live together and do all the things that other couples do, and basically, start our life here. We met in Boston, and we moved back to Rhode Island. And then once we both decided we wanted to become parents, we went on that route, and we have a 5-year-old daughter. And but when Rhode Island passed their same-sex marriage laws in 2013, we were presented with a new opportunity, which we were obviously ecstatic and over the moon about. It took us a couple years to, I think, wrap our heads around it and having a child, but we knew we wanted to do that, and we did that in a very small ceremony. So that's a little bit about me.
Can you recall some of well, it wasn't a surprise that Rhode Island was going to pass marriage equality. Mm-hmm. We knew for a couple of years actually when it would be. The pieces were lining up. So I would imagine you weren't surprised, but still, what were the feelings when the bill was signed, and here we are, and there's from a different world in some ways. So what can you kind of recapture some of the feelings you had?
Yeah, I think it's, even though you're right, you feel like progress is marching, and there were signs across the country, and obviously here, and attitudes were changing. Until it actually happens, though, you don't want to get too excited, or you're hopeful every session, and you're hopeful every year that things will be different. So until it actually was signed into law, as the 10th state, I think Rhode Island was, it's a little surreal still when that happens, because and you realize that you're standing as part of a movement, and you're part of a movement of so many who didn't have that opportunity. So I think surreal, but overwhelmed and excited, and yeah, it's an interesting dynamic of multiple emotions at play all at once until you actually can like witness it and see it actually go into law.
Okay, good. Isaac, what are you all about?
So my name is Isaac. I'm living in Cranston now. I lived there until I was about 6, and then my family outgrew our apartment and we moved to Lincoln, and I spent most of my life there. I'm now living at, it's my grandparents' old house. My grandfather actually built it, which is pretty cool. And I'm renting it from my parents, so it's all sort of like, I don't know, a big cycle. Yeah, so I'm one of 5 kids. My parents both, they met in Cranston. Both sets of grandparents live in Cranston. It's very, very Rhode Island family. And yeah, I went to school here. Actually, I went to Rhode Island College and then to URI. So very, very Rhode Island. Yeah, and I'm transgender. And so I actually ended up coming out twice over the course of my experience. So the first time was in 2010, coming out in terms of my orientation and the fact that I was attracted to women. And then the second time was in 2013. So a few years later, I had to break the news again to my parents that, okay, no, actually, I see myself more as a man. So, yeah.
How did that go?
Well,
You remember those conversations fondly?
not exactly.
Do they?
Probably not. I actually never told my dad about me being trans. My mom ended up relaying the message. I just talked with her, and it was kind of met with a lot of questions and a lot of sort of, like, you're perfect the way you are, and like God doesn't make mistakes, and a lot of things like that. So sort of just bringing up guilt, I guess. But they're coming around.
And friends?
Friends, it's been fine. Yeah, I haven't really had much trouble. Most of it was like it's a switch for the people that I knew, like changing pronouns and changing use of name. And so for some people, they would kind of like mix it up a bit in the beginning. But yeah, it was pretty smooth outside of like my home, I would say. So for a little while, it was like I was living as 2 different people, one in the house and then one everywhere else. But.
So you both came of age in a time of transitions. Are you able to talk about that at all in your own personal experiences, having come to adulthood as this part of the world, the Northeast, the U.S., the West, probably more than the rest of the world, but they'll follow, was also learning that their assumptions needed to be addressed or needed to be examined, and some of their compass points needed to be re-examined and reset. So you have, you're part of a generation that has come through at a really, to me, probably the time of most transition. Do you have any insights about how you have come to age in this, come to adulthood as the world was changing to make, I would assume, or I would hope, your lives more comfortable?
Yeah, and I can take a stab at that. Certainly, I would agree with what you're saying, and I think what we've seen certainly in the U.S. with this sort of accelerated progress, but at each step, I think there is also, that it gives people pause, or it certainly gives me pause. While there's been great progress, there's still so much work to do. And I mean, everywhere. Just geography, different parts of the country. I make no assumptions either that, everyone, I think what I've learned, and I'm a little bit older than Isaac, but I still benefited from the great progress that was made. I do think about all the people who had to live closeted their entire lives and never could experience, certainly what I've experienced, and able to, just live my truth. But it took me a long time to reconcile my own truth, and I think that's a big part of anyone's journey. And I didn't come out until I was 30, so I'd gone to college and came from a totally supportive family. I have two younger sisters, and I think it's part personality and just a lot of taking care of everybody else, and I wasn't taking care of myself. That's just sort of more of a personal trait. But I think I was also, while I was totally supported, there was a concern, right? I think my parents, both were concerned how the world was going to treat me, being gay and being different, and so it was out of a place of love, I think, where their hesitation was initially. But I can tell you, when I think about my own journey, and while I don't regret anything, although, obviously if I could have come to terms and been out sooner, that would have relieved some stress and anxiety, and my own, just my own inner sort of turmoil there, although I was living in Boston too at the time, so I think I had a separation. I was able to kind of be in Boston, as Isaac mentioned. Like I had sort of like this dual, I don't say a dual life, but I was able to be in Boston and be free, kind of who I was. And but then when I came home, the barriers went up. So it took me a little bit longer, but my family's been extraordinary. I can't imagine. I'd only hope everyone has the same experience that I have had. But and especially now being in a same-sex marriage and raising a daughter, I think I certainly understand where my mother was coming from when she had concern and was just concerned for her daughter. And and it's even more important, I think, for me to live my truth every single day for my daughter, because to know that she lives, in a home that is respectful of all, and we are totally inclusive, and we're proud of who we are. So it's really important.
How old is she?
She's 5.
Great age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. A little work, too.
Yeah, just a little.
You got
fun.
more work coming. Just a little clue.
Yes.
It's going to get a little, there were some
Different
bumps in the
energy.
road as low teens. If you haven't heard that before.
Yeah, no,
Pre-adolescents, girls.
we're ready.
And what about school? So you both had self-awareness in high school, middle school, high school. What was the experience there? Now, at that time, I would think even for both of you, the community, the community was less accepting. Am I right?
I would actually say that I didn't really have awareness. Definitely not through middle school. I think during high school I started figuring out, I had like these obsessions with friends of mine who were girls, and I actually remember going home and like trying to look online to like find out if that was like an acceptable thing or like a normal thing for girls, because my parents were very like religious, like Roman Catholic, and so they kind of saw homosexuality as a sin, and that was what I had like been raised with. So I don't know. I can't really remember anyone being openly gay or trans or anything during high school. I know a couple people that everyone sort of assumed to be, and yeah, they had like very small group of friends, and it's sort of like, I don't know, I don't think that high school would have been a good place for me to have come out if I did sort of have my mind wrapped around it then.
But you get to work with college students now.
Yes.
Do you get a sense from them that high school is a more supportive place than when you were in high school?
I think so, particularly because I actually thought that I came out late, because I came out when I was 20. So, and like, but the more people I speak to, like, it seems like the earlier they start figuring things out or like being able to like come out, and which is awesome, I think. But I definitely think that wouldn't be possible if it weren't a bit more of an open environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I would even think, in my high school, same experience, and I think of high schools today, here in Rhode Island, and when I lived in Massachusetts, certainly a lot of gay-straight alliances, even like the inclusive schools, and so I think, yes, while maybe we sort of were on the cusp of that and missed some of that in our own experiences. It certainly seems, and I think those are very telling when they have those gay-straight alliances and, inclusive counselors, and so it's definitely, again, the progress. It seems more inclusive, while there's still struggles in some districts where I think they're maybe not as welcoming.
Yeah. It's okay. Let's kind of switch to challenges. So we've seen a lot of progress. What challenges do you sense young people face these days? So in terms of coming to self-awareness, dealing with it, family reaction, community reaction, schools, wherever the challenges may come from?
I would say some of the biggest challenges right now for people who are transgender would be, it relates to the states. The Obama administration had sort of added in gender identity to Title IX to cover it, to have it federally covered, but the Trump administration has since removed it, and so now it goes back to what the states have in their own legislation. And Rhode Island does have gender identity included in it, in its like non-discrimination clauses, which is great, and I, for one, am very fortunate for that.
Well, ACLU was instrumental in getting that policy implemented.
Thank you.
I was doing TV shows.
Well, I'm sure you contributed in some way. You've been doing that. There you go. Yeah, but the bathroom bills have become like a big thing right now. So essentially trying to police who can use what bathroom. There are people who believe that a person who is transgender should use the bathroom that the sex they were determined to be at birth is, which would mean that for me, I would be using the woman's room. And I think that if I walked into the woman's room right now, that would not go over well. So that's definitely an issue. And I think children can tend to figure out that they're trans by like the age of between like 3 and 5. That's when people kind of have a sense of what their gender is. And so the earlier they're coming out, teachers have to deal with that, parents have to learn about it, and it kind of, I think, sort of throws everyone off when that happens. So.
Throws off the adults?
Yes.
The teachers and the parents?
Yeah.
Who came of age, obviously, at a different time, and there's going to be a time lag for when they're going to be prepared, right, for dealing with their children or other family members coming out.
Yeah, I think so, because it's either there's sort of a time lag in which they try and sort of learn about these things and catch themselves up, or sort of the opposite of that, which is sort of pushing it away and kind of trying to steer the child away from that identity for whatever reasons, if it's religious, if it's safety, if it's just generally not knowing.
Mm-hmm. Do you see that as abating over time as people become more aware?
Yeah, I think so.
From what you said, as somebody who works with 20-year-olds and 18 to 21-year-olds, do you get a sense that from the population that has had these experiences, that their parents seem to be better prepared than maybe your parents were or people older than you?
It's slow, but I do think that it's changing. For my parents, for example, it would mean, like, the information is now available, and because of the internet, you can find these sorts of things, and that's how I learned a lot about what transgender was, because I didn't know. But it means actually going and like searching for those things. But there are more LGBTQ people in media, and so it's getting there like very slowly.
Yeah. And something you said earlier about the internet. So when you started to have questions, you can go to the internet. Imagine people of my generation where I remember when the math calculator came out, I thought it's the end of the world. There's no more technology. So people of my age, without the benefit or the challenges that come with the internet, how difficult that must have been. Do you know people who have talked about that? Kind of like pre-internet coming out and being able to connect with other people as opposed to being isolated.
I definitely know people who have. I guess I haven't really talked about it too much with any of them, but I can imagine it would be pretty difficult.
They had different experiences.
Yeah. No, and I think, while there's great technology, there's great information, there's access to, there's representation in the media, which is amazing and important. I think a lot of people's fears, though, because I think to me, it's been less about, while every generation does make strides, and I think it's less of an age maybe gap, while certainly, and it's, not too long ago, homosexuality was considered an illness, so.
I remember.
So, right, so I mean, there are generational strides to be made, but I think one way to break down otherness is it's people having conversations with other people and for people to live their truth. And, I live in a very, I'd say conventional, neighborhood where it's a lot of, single-family homes, and there was a little bit of hesitation because you say it's Rhode Island, we're progressive, we're a blue state, but I know when the two of us, when my partner at the time, my now spouse, moved in, we kind of crossed our fingers and said, well, we think we're nice, we think we're funny, like we think we're pretty sort of non-threatening, like I hope people don't. What will they really think when two women, move into this house on their neighborhood? Sort of breaking in when it's been an established neighborhood with lots of families growing up. So there is always, the fear kind of creeps into your brain, for sure, because it's unknown. But by building relationships with all of our neighbors, and we have friends, we have not been treated differently by anyone. Everyone's, it's really been a wonderful experience. But but if someone has a problem, they haven't voiced it to us. I'm not making any blind assumptions. But I can say everyone has respected us, and certainly, our daughter, and so it's been a wonderful experience. Although initially, there is those fears of like, well, what if we're not accepted here, and what will we do? What if she's not accepted at school, or if we have an issue, or if one of the teachers has an issue with us as a same-sex family? But again, that we haven't encountered that, luckily and thankfully. But I guess you're always maybe prepared for that in some way too.
Who are your role models? I just thought of that question. I like that. It could be about anything, but who do you look at as these are the people I really have high regard for? Like the private or public people?
Somebody comes to mind?
For me, I would say my grandfather on my mom's side of the family. He passed away when I was 12, so I didn't know him for too long, but he was always just a very kind person, and he had a lot of skills. Carpentry was one of them, and would just like to sort of tinker, as my mom and my grandma used to describe it. And I feel like I have a lot of similarities with him, and I don't know. I just kind of want to be remembered in the same way that he has been. And actually, I would also say more recently, my boss actually, who is no longer in the office that I'm in anymore, but for the first year and a half, I think it was definitely, I don't know, I definitely just saw him as a positive figure in my life, more so than even my own dad.
What about public figures? Does a public figure come to mind? Somebody in leadership role, local, state, national, international?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Fine. I like that question.
Yeah. I know role models can be said. It's hard to pick just one. I also, the first person that comes to my mind too is my mother. Is a strong woman who runs her own business and a strong female. So for me, having a strong female influence, she certainly comes to mind. I think of the other, I went to college and played sports, so I think any athlete who comes out while they're still actively playing their sport, professional or college, like they're role models to me because they face a whole barrage of potential taunts, and especially now with 24 hours news cycles. So I think some of the, in particular, there's been some female WNBA players that have come out and they're still active and they're amazing at what they do. And then I think the plaintiffs who brought the Supreme Court case are certainly role models for their tenacity and persisting for years and years of their efforts. So
good transition to 2017. So it's Pride Fest month. I don't know how many Pride Fests there have been. I don't remember when the first was. Somebody more knowledgeable than I might recall. Do you know how many? How many we've had?
I'm forgetting.
It started in the 1970s, so it's been around for a while.
We're moving along. So it's June 17th in Providence. What do you see as the main areas of focus for 2017 Pride Fest? What's the message, if there is? It could, maybe 2017 is an internal celebration. Yay, look at us, and let's have a good time. Is there an external message or an internal message to people and an external message to the larger community? What are the major themes for you as individuals participating in Pride Fest?
I mean, I've had the opportunity, I don't know if, Isaac, you've celebrated Pride in other cities, but I've had the opportunity to celebrate Pride in Massachusetts and in the Boston area, as well as here in Rhode Island, and caught the tail end of one in San Francisco, which was fun. But for me, I think it's always been about being visible, right? The community coming, but also the whole community coming together. And I think within any group, there's sort of different slices, but I think, to really embrace the full community is important. And you've asked about role models too. I mean, I think, to be honest, Isaac is a role model for all that, your journey. It's true. I mean, to have to come out twice and, so I think, individuals like Isaac who live their truth and as part of our community, it's critical, right? That we're all inclusive and we're all standing together. So for me, that would be a personal.
That's a message internally and externally.
For me, yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely see it as a space for community, very, very visibly so. And it's also like you're either a part of the community and you're there and kind of celebrating that, or there are other people outside of the community just sort of coming to show support or just kind of out of curiosity to see, what's going on. Usually there's, I think, I don't know if it's Benefit Street or South Main, South Water, but the streets are closed down and there's just like tables and vendors, and some of them are different, corporations, like big businesses, and some of them are like local. Some of them are even just sort of resources for people in the community.
And one of the most interesting tables that I hope you will show up at is the ACLU table, which will be at Pride Fest on June 17th. If you're watching this program after June 17th, I hope you stopped in. But on that note, our time has elapsed. Quick, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am so appreciative that you were able to come on. Now you're not rookies anymore.
That's right.
Maybe we'll have you again, and we do this every month. Marissa Patricia, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I hope we get to meet your daughter
Yes.
at some point. Put her on our program. Isaac Albanese, I have family at Brown, and maybe we'll run into, I taught at Rick for 35 years.
Awesome.
So you weren't in the right major because we've never met before. And we'll leave it at that. Thanks for tuning in. Contact the ACLU if any of these issues we discussed today are of interest or concern. And we'll see you next time.